See.
Ready?
Yeah.
All right, we're back with another video, and I get this video to interview Anita. Are you ready, Anita?
Yeah.
So, how did you grow up, Anita?
So I grew up in a very happy, simple, you could almost say sheltered childhood. My dad was a pastor, and then a bunch of years later, my mom is also a pastor, also became a pastor. And so I very much grew up in the church, and it was a very sheltered upbringing, but also a very happy one. But my world started to open up when my family moved to a suburb of Toronto. We moved from a smaller town into the Toronto area, and that blew open my world, because I went from going to a small Christian private school to a public school filled with people from different countries, spoke different languages, different cultures, and that just blew open my world. And I went to university and I studied business and media. I had actually always felt like I wanted to work in media. And a part of that was because when I was younger, I struggled with how I looked and feeling like I needed to look a certain way. And so I felt like media was giving me all this pressure. And so I would go and work in media to spread hope and positive messages. And so that's the path I followed. And then when I finished school, this is like the very Cliff Notes version of my life. But when I finished school, I discovered the wonderful world of blogging, and that you could make a living from your laptop. And this was, way before the pandemic. So I didn't know anyone taking those kinds of chances doing it, but I found an online entrepreneur who offered a course, and then I actually invested my own money into taking this extra course in addition to the university courses I was already taking. So my last semester of my university, I just binged this course, this extra course, and then that kind of opened the door for me to try to figure out how to make a living from my laptop. It kind of worked and kind of didn't, but it did help me spend a couple of years traveling the world, working. Sometimes it was odd jobs and sometimes it was content creation related. And then came back to Toronto in 17, and then started working in the city. And then along that journey was how I met Tim.
So let's talk a little bit about how what was it when you saw me? Like, the first impression of somebody like myself is you see my height. My physicality is something you see right away. So what was that like for you when you met me?
So I just barely remember meeting Tim for the first time, because we were at our mutual friend Jordan's birthday. And there was a lot of people there, and Jordan and his wife Sonia, they were my neighbors at that time. And so I was going to their place every couple of days or maybe every 2 weeks. So I was just I just walk in, there's a bunch of people there. And Tim is there. And I didn't recall, it wasn't like we had some 3-hour conversation and suddenly I knew. It was actually just in passing. I kind of noticed that I think I noticed that his feet seemed to dangle off the chair. So it was okay, I guess he's short. But then otherwise, I just treated him like everyone else, because my friends Jordan and Sonia are very welcoming, very genuine people. And so I knew that anyone that they were friends with would probably be a good person and someone that I could also be friends with.
So yeah, at the party you met me. And that was the first time we met, at Jordan's birthday party. And then I think it was shortly after that I had seen you, because Jordan was doing these Zoom meetups after his church. And I remember seeing you online, and you were so bubbly, and you talked about your making banana muffins and taking them around. And I really liked hearing about your generosity and that. So tell us a little bit about kind of, when we became friends. So how was that for you, that when we became friends, and was it something in your mind that me being shorter or my physicality was something that was maybe gonna hinder, or was it something that bothered you? Tell me a little bit about kind of how that happened. So we met at the birthday party. It wasn't about a year later that I went and visited you in Niagara. And tell me a little bit about maybe how all that kind of unfolded to you.
Yeah, so when you started coming to visit me in Niagara,
Yeah.
at the time I lived in this big beautiful house that was in Niagara wine country, and it wasn't that far from the city, maybe just 45 minutes. And so I thought, it'll be so cool to have my friends come visit me, hang out, use the home. But that distance, when you live in the city, everyone's pretty busy. And so to try to get friends to come out 45 minutes outside of the city turned out to be a lot harder than I thought. So actually, very few people came to visit me. And most of the time, most weekends, I'd end up going back into the city. But the one time, Tim messaged me and said, "Oh, I'm passing through." And I said, "Oh, come stop by," because I've been trying to get my friends to come visit me, but nobody will. So I was just happy to have company. And because my work was in that area, it was just nice to not have to drive to go see someone but to have a friend come and see me. And so when Tim and I started hanging out more, we would just have simple dinners. We'd go for walks because there was a field in my backyard. It was definitely like platonic and
Yeah.
just friends. And as we've mentioned in another video, which we'll link below, it was like, people sometimes think I friend zoned Tim. Well, Tim also equally friend zoned me because I only ever got friend zone vibes. And I really enjoyed being a friend with him because we had a lot of commonalities in terms of, travel, generosity, and, I loved what he was doing with his charity. And so, I offered to help in different ways there. And it was just a friendship that grew organically off of shared interests. And I never saw him romantically, one, because I didn't sense anything from him, but also because he is a shorter person, I kind of just assumed, and because he gave off this vibe, like he was very comfortable being single. I'll say that. And so I just kind of felt like, okay, I guess he's fine. Some people have decide they want to be single, or they feel that they're called to be single and they're just going to be single their whole life, and there was a part of me that also really enjoyed being single. So I was like, okay, great. Here's a friend who's also perfectly fine being single and I don't have to worry about anything with. And so that was why it never crossed my mind, and I felt like Tim was very confident in himself and he had a sense of purpose. He was doing stuff with his charity. He didn't need anyone. He never gave across that impression like he was looking. So that's how I felt about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting when we talk about that. I was very comfortable in who I was and in my singleness, and then Anita was very comfortable in her stage of singleness, and I think it really is how we hit off a friendship. There was no games, there was no double meanings of words, there was no weird things going on, and it was something that just blossomed and grew. Now, obviously, I was the first one that caught feelings, and we talk about that in different parts of the love story. And when you catch feelings with somebody that you care about as a friend, it's like, well, what do you do, right? And so you were getting ready and thinking about going on a sabbatical. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? You had saved up money, you were going to go away, you're going to go away for a year on this sabbatical.
So
So
the
tell
way
us a little
that
bit
Tim
about
ended
that.
up telling me was we were in California at an Airbnb, and then we were just playing Uno. And this was how much, I really enjoyed having Tim as a friend because I felt like we could just do stuff like this and not have any weirdness. And then, and so I'm talking about the sabbatical that I planned on going on, in a couple of months. I had saved up for years for this. And, part of me was hoping that I would never come back to Toronto, that I'd already worked in Toronto 6 years. That was enough for me. I was ready to experience the rest of the world again. And so I was just talking about it like I wasn't going to come back. Maybe I won't come back. I'm hoping, maybe I'll find a place I want to settle. And then Tim blurted out his line, which is now famous for us, which was, "What about me?" And as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what he was referring to. And I said, and in my head, I was like, oh, I thought he was just a friend. But I knew that he was referring to, because because what about him? He's just, what I actually said out loud was, trying to ignore the fact that now I knew that he liked me. I just tried, what I said back was as if I had no idea. And I just said, "Oh, what do you mean, what about you? Like, I'll see you, like, maybe once, twice, 3 times a year, the same way I'll see my family." Because I was saying, I'm going to go travel the world and I'll see my friends, a few times a year. And then he said, "What about me?" And then I was like, "Well, you'll be like everyone else of my friends and family. I'll see you maybe twice a year." And then I think he might have even said, like, "Well, what if I want to see you more," or something?
No, I said something to the effect of, because again, I was very vulnerable, right? In this position of my feelings were just starting to bubble out, and I said it. And then I said something like, "Well, how could you leave your family, the people you care most about? How can you just leave?" And I think it kind of didn't go over just well to Anita.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
actually said, "I don't understand." He said that, and he said, "I don't understand why someone as kind as you can just leave
That's right.
everyone."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Excuse me?" I was like, "I'm not leaving them. Well, what I thought was, I'm not leaving them. I'm living my life. Thank you
Yeah.
very much."
Yeah.
But I said something. I said something back like I'm not leaving them. I'll
Yeah.
see them.
Yeah.
2 or 3 times.
So that was an interesting moment.
But I knew that, right?
Yeah.
He was basically saying he didn't want to be one of my regular friends and family who only saw me once or twice a year. And so I promptly ended this Uno game, after explaining a couple more times that, like, I'm not a rude, like, inconsiderate person. This is just, like, this is how I want to, this is a life choice I want to make, and you clearly don't understand me. So I just kind of quickly ended the Uno game and was like, and went upstairs. And I think when I was going up, I asked him, like, "Oh, are you gonna like tidy up? Are you gonna, go up now?" And he's like, and he said, "Oh, I'll stay on, I'll stay down here for a bit." And he kind of had a little tear in his eye, but I was like, "Oh, brother." So I went upstairs, and then the next morning, I didn't want things to be awkward, and I like, because he had never actually said to me, "I like you," so I never had to reply to that. I just knew it based on the way he asked. So I just treated it like we had just had a normal friend conversation. And then the rest of that trip was fine. I could tell he was a little bit down, but I think in the morning he was down, but I think after a day or so, he kind of, bubbled back up and got back to normal. But what that did start was that now I knew he liked me, and now I had to know what to do about it. And so when I came back to Toronto after that trip, I was back in my house. But he was back with his life, and that was when I really had to think about, what do I do about these feelings that I know Tim has for me, and do I just, I didn't like him that way, so I figured, okay, I'll just have to tell him in a nice way that I don't see him that way.
Yeah. Wow. So, and that to me is, as well as you might think we know everything, that's real life, right? I was very vulnerable. I'm very well spoken and very eloquent, maybe, but I still didn't know what to say. I didn't even know how to say it. These things happen as they happen. But one of the things I respect about Anita is the way she reacted to it, the way she dealt with it and dealt with me. And it really made me feel so good about this friend that, I had. So let's talk a little bit about kind of that journey of you figuring out now that things were getting more open about my feelings, and then you're kind of wrestling or figuring them out. And how did you journey through that from your point of view? That, you know, I had feelings. Did you have feelings, or was this something you were just going to, you know, walk away from, or tell me, right? So kind of tell us a little bit about that part for
Okay.
you.
Okay. So now we're going to get into the deep end. What ended up happening was I had my sister help me write a very diplomatic text to Tim to try to tell him that I don't like him. And somewhere in our phones, this text probably exists, and one day we'll have to dig it up because it was like this long. And I had to, you know, be in a very try nice way, be like, I really like you as a person and as a friend, and only as a friend. And it took more than one try, I feel like, to tell Tim this. And I eventually felt like it took me a couple days to draft up this text. And because I knew that he would probably understand what I was telling him and it would kind of hurt his feelings, but I had to send it. So once I drafted it, I didn't send it yet. And then I actually felt this prompting in my heart, which I considered a prompting from God, asking me, why are you resisting Tim so much? Because actually there were other things that had happened before this California trip that I felt were like, that I kind of had to tell Tim to like, let's be friends in a nice way, but nothing as big as the Uno games. Which is why I still felt comfortable going to California. But this wasn't the first time I had written like a diplomatic text to Tim. So I felt God saying like, why are you trying so hard to resist Tim? And in this moment, there was like maybe a 3 or 4 day window before I sent this text. So we're back in Toronto and I drafted up this text, but I didn't send it yet. And then I remembered this book by Nick Vujicic. This is his name and this is his book, Love Without Limits. I remembered. So if you don't know who Nick is, he's a motivational speaker. He's incredibly inspiring. He was born without arms and legs. But he now travels the world encouraging people because he didn't let that stop him from, having a great attitude. And so I knew that I had seen that he had written this book because he has a wife and she's gorgeous, but she's a full regular height person. And so I had always kind of remembered this visual because I thought, because you can't forget that once you see it. And so I remembered this book that he had written. And so I went right away, found a copy of it and read it in like 2 days. And in the process of reading this book, there were a couple things that I felt like stuck out to me and God was using it to challenge me. And one of the things was when his wife was kind of going through the same thing I was, where she kind of knew that she knew that he liked her and maybe she liked him, but she wasn't sure about the fact that he has no arms and legs. And so someone asked her 5 questions about that she should think through, kind of as like the first pass. And if this person doesn't pass these 5 questions, then you shouldn't consider it all. And the 5 were something like, is this person a man of God with character? And for her, she was answering yes for Nick. And then, I forget what the other ones are, but the other one was, are there any red flags? And the answer was no for her. And as I went through these questions, and it was, is this person caring? Basically, does this person have generally good qualities? And does this person follow God and trust God? And, are there any red flags? And so all of the questions were yes for the good things, and is this person have any red flags? It was no. And so as I'm reading her response to these questions for Nick, I'm asking them myself about Tim. And then I'm like, oh, like there's no red flags. And like, oh, maybe I do like him a little. And so that was like a light bulb moment for me reading that book, realizing that I do have feelings for Tim, even though I never saw it that way. And also there was one line in the book that really stuck out to me, and somebody told the wife, Kane, because she was like, what do you do about the fact that Nick has no arms and legs? And someone told her back, maybe he doesn't have hands and he can't hold your hand, but he can hold your heart. And I was like, oh, because that is so Tim. Maybe he can't reach the upper cabinet of the kitchen, but he can totally hold my heart, and he can hold the whole world in his heart. And it just made me realize that all of these physical things that might be like deficits, they are so small compared to the character of a person, compared to what is in their heart. And just to give you an example, like months later, after we kind of processed a lot of this stuff, I once said to Tim, but what about the fact, like, what do I do in life as if I'm the only person who can ever reach high things and has to, help with all the high things? What if you can't help with this and that? And then he said back to me, it's not that it has nothing to do with whether I can reach it or not. It's that if I want to help, if somebody wants to help you, they will. If I want to help, I'll find a way. And I understood that, because with Tim, it really is, there are stools, there are sticks, there are clamps, there are all kinds of things. If somebody wants to help you, it doesn't matter if they're 6 foot tall or not, they will help you. But if they're 6 foot tall and they don't care about you and they don't have a heart for you and they're just not like a kind person, it doesn't matter that they've got all the muscles in the world, they will not pick up anything for you, right? Whereas if somebody's 4 foot tall, but they want to help you, they will do whatever they can to try to help you. And so that's reading that book and seeing her point of view, and realize it just like illuminated for me what's really important in someone that you're going to spend your days with. And by then, we had been friends for some time, and I knew what kind of person he was, that he was genuine and caring, and he was helpful, and there was a softness, or as I like to say, he's a tender-hearted person. And so I knew that he cared about me, and I knew that he cared for people, and that he would do whatever he could to support things that he loved. And he was willing to sacrifice for things that he loved too. And I knew that because I saw it with his charity. And that was something that was also important to me, that I'm willing to also sacrifice for things that I love. So that was how I came to discover that I liked Tim.
That's so wonderful. I get teary-eyed. If we had a Zoom lens, you would see that I'm tearing up, because this is really the story of our love that grew. And as a guy, I want to tell people that are listening that I wanted to give Anita as much time to figure this out. I could have put pressure on her, I could have been demanding, but I really was just saying she needs time. She needs to work through this, and there's nothing wrong. Even reading the book and talking to her sister and kind of going through the processing of it, I think it's great. So you might be in a situation that you might be someone like Anita's, maybe somebody likes you and you don't know what to do. Or maybe you're like me, you're putting your heart out there. So let time will heal, and time will work through to find out where the best is. And I really like that Anita spent that time, and I love that. So my encouragement is to you is to take that time, whatever it may be. I just love that.
So the twist though is that I had this text drafted to tell Tim that I didn't like him.
Yeah.
And I still sent it. So I read the book, kind of figured out, I think I have feelings, and I do like Tim, but I have this text, and I really need Tim to know. So I sent it to him anyway. And then I think, maybe I sent it, and then I read the book. Anyways, it was all in this, I would say it's a 1 week window where I'm sending I've got the text, I'm about to send it, I'm reading the book, send the text anyway. And we won't get into everything that happened after, because I'm running low on energy, and we'll
save it. We'll save it, yeah.
But what happened after is Tim has gotten another text from me saying that I don't like him. But I think after in the following 2 weeks after I send the text and I read the book and I start to just think and feel and I just kind of remember what Tim means to me, I actually start being a little nicer to him. And I think it was also a couple weeks after I was hosting his charity's Christmas party at the house that I lived in. And so that was also one of these moments I realized, I just realized that I was happier when Tim was around. And I think they might call that love. And so there was a couple weeks where I started texting Tim more. So I sent him this text saying I don't like him. Can we be friends? This is my diplomatic long text, but then I start texting him a little bit more with a little bit more emojis, being a little bit more friendly, a little bit earlier in the day. And so now Tim is having to deal with these kind of mixed messages, and
Yeah.
and
That's what happened.
Tell you what happens next, or you can read it on the story, and we'll save the story.
We'll save that. But we want to, just go through that journey with Anita and to hear her heart and kind of what happened. And it's very special to hear it from you again. Anything else we want to, before we close off?
I think the big message of this, one of the things I hope you get is that it's so important to listen to your heart and listen to God. And yes, there's external things that, anyone that you meet, even if they're the most good-looking person in the world, that can be a disadvantage, right? Or they're the most average-looking person in the world. That can also be a disadvantage. The key is, to really see people for who they are in their hearts and not just for how they look. And that's been one of the most beautiful things that our relationship, our marriage has created this opportunity for us to talk about now. To me, I grew up with my parents telling me that you should always judge a person by the inside, not the outside. Because in Chinese culture, it's very common for people to comment on how you look, for better or for worse. So I would get a lot of aunties telling me oh, you're so pretty, Anita's so pretty. And then my parents would basically tell me, almost don't believe them. The important thing, it's more important, how you look inside is more important than how you look outside. They say this in Chinese. The inner beauty is more important than outer beauty. And so I always grew up hearing that. And I guess I really internalized it. And so I feel with Tim, he is the most beautiful person inside. And he's the most beautiful person outside. I think so. I think he's so adorable. And so but in the end, it's the inner person. That's who you live with, right? How they treat you, who they've become on their own journey, whether they're kind, they're patient, understanding, they're listening, they're mature, they're wise, all these kinds of things. And then it's, having the courage to decide for yourself who someone is, because sometimes the people around you won't understand right off the bat why you like someone who looks in a particular way or not. And that's a journey that we had to go on as well. But we'll share that.
Awesome. All right, that's it for today. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you, Tim. We'll share more in a future video. If you guys have questions or want to hear more, you will hear more.
Yeah.
Let us know what you want to, let us know your comments and your thoughts, and if this resonates with you in some way. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.